Hello, welcome. I've prepared some sample code to demonstrate the use of a cascading drop-down list form. I'll also be demonstrating some stored procedures. Not really their development. We'll take a look at the code maybe. And I've created 3 different tables in a sample database on a server called Awesome. I managed to get Microsoft SQL Server Management Studio working partially with VWD 2010 Express. However, a lot of the features are disabled here, so I had to write code for everything. And a lot of the Express features are disabled as well, but I was able to get 3 tables created and 3 stored procedures. Here's just the definition of the stored procedures, all 3 of them. Basically, I've got a transportation table to hold modes of transportation, such as a car, a boat, or a plane. And then I've got a transportation item table to hold different types of cars, different types of planes, different types of boats. And then another table called accessories, transportation accessories, and this contains things like a leak kit, a fishing pole. For the plane, it contains a parachute, an eject button. Okay, so basically I've created 3 database tables and 3 stored procedures to interact with them within an ASP.NET application. Okay, so there's basically the data side. Here's the form that I'm calling Cascade SP. If we want to look at this, I'm just going to pin my properties down, and okay, so here's Cascade SP and the code behind and the design. Also doing some different stuff, but get to that later, testing and so forth. So let's look at the code, and we'll run the app. Now, keep in mind, the code is somewhat procedural, just because I don't really see it going beyond a demo stage. Otherwise, I'd take some time to write some functions and everything, but I really just wanted to hammer something together to demonstrate. Okay, so here we've got boat. When we select a transportation type, our items will be made accessible or enabled. Okay, and when we select a canoe, we have items, accessories that we could take with our canoe. Okay, and to see that this is cascading, let's select a car, and we'll select Nissan, and now we'll have car accessories. Okay, so yeah, there's a cascading drop-down form component, I guess, eventually, if you wanted it to be. So what we're doing here is saying if is not postback, and I'll try not to shake around a lot. But here we apply the data source to the drop-down. We use a getData function so we can pass a stored procedure name and a parameter. So let's take a look at getData right here. We have got a private function of type dataset through our system.data, and we create an SQL connection, and here's my connection string for my Awesome server and my sample table. And then I've got the SQL data adapter set up here to take my stored procedure name and the connection. Then we set our command. Basically, we say data adapter.select command. Command type is going to be of type store procedure. Okay, then we check for a stored procedure parameter. And the reason we check is because the first transportation stored procedure, it doesn't require a parameter. It just lists the item ID and the transportation name, whether it be car, boat, or plane. However, if on another use of this function there is a parameter, say we're going to select cars based on the transportation ID, as we saw, then we would apply the select command, the parameter, adding a parameter to the select command on our SQL data adapter, which is ultimately our stored procedure and parameter. Yeah. Okay, and then we just create a data set and fill the results of our stored procedure and return the data set. Okay, so that's that. That's what the getData function is doing. So on page load, basically our get request is we're going to define a display field and a value on our drop-down list items, and then we can bind the data. Okay, so we could obviously do that in code or here. I just like doing everything in code. And we provide some default list items to prompt appropriate selection, and then we disable the following two drop-down lists, okay? And because we want to make sure that they actually select an item before enabling. Okay, so upon selected index change of drop-down list 1, we want to make sure that an item has been selected. Now, select index 0 is our default list item entry on the items collection. So we want to ensure that it's an actual item, and they might also change their mind, and in the event that they change their mind, we'll have to do some configuration on the accessibility of the form controls. So otherwise, they've selected an item. We enabled the second drop-down list. We set up a parameter so we can query our stored procedure. So we say SQL parameter type. The parameter equals new SQL parameter, and this is the query parameter for our stored procedure. And we use the value from the selected index of drop-down list 1. Okay. So we take its ID and perform the second get data request with, and there's that stored procedure and the parameter. Okay, assign the data source to the results of the get data. Provide the column, field, and value as the result from the stored procedure, and bind the data. Provide our default selection item entry to drop-down list 2, and then we disable 3. Okay, just to ensure that that's disabled. Okay, so when drop-down list 2 selected index change event is fired, we make sure that they have selected an item, and it's the same thing. Now here's where I could probably optimize things with functions and everything, but since it's just a quick project, I didn't do that. So yeah, so if the item's selected, we prepare the parameter for the query on our stored procedure. Okay, provide the stored procedure name and the parameter. Okay, get the results for our data source, since we're returning a data set from our get data set or get data function, and it's business as usual. And defining the results to the text field and text and value fields, bind the data, and provide our default selection. Okay, so that's that. Thanks for watching. Let me know if you have any questions. See you soon.